Hello friends! I think it's about time we sort out the mess that is my shelves. We haven't done this in over a year. I think it was like May or March. It was an M, I think, last year. And as you saw recently with my haul, all of those books are still sitting on my reading chair. They have not found a home because there is no room. I have been putting this off because of my hand, but I cannot put it off any longer. The tyranny of full bookshelves will end today. But there are plenty of books on here that I read several years ago that I sort of gave like a 3, 3.5, maybe even a 4 that I just don't think about anymore. And then there are plenty of other books that I bought years ago that I don't know that I want to read anymore. I have to, at the very least, make space for the books that are sitting on my reading chair because like I need my reading chair back. So like that's the standard, that's the bare minimum of what I need to achieve today. Honestly, obviously I would rather achieve much more than that so that I don't have to do this again in 3 months time. Like I can do it again in a year. Where do I even start? I'm gonna start with moving Ollie's bed because it is here and it's in my way. Ollie, do you mind if I move your bed? What do you reckon? Your bed's normally here, now it's here and you're not too sure about it. You wanna help me? Do you wanna help me, Ollie? So the very, very top shelf, which I don't think you can see very well, it's mostly like series and also some of my like large graphic novels. And I don't think anything's gonna go from there. So let's just start with this next shelf down. This shelf here, this is all Australian fiction to here. And then the second half is Australian non-fiction. Are there any Australian books I wanna get rid of? Actually, you know what we need to do first is I need to take off all the little knickknacks so that I have full access to these books and they don't drop on Ollie. Hobie's still here. This is where I keep my bookmarks, just sitting here. I got this recently. It's Nyanko Sensei from Natsume's Book of Friends, and so he sits with my Natsume collection. I love him. Is that everything? I think that's mostly everything. Now I have to actually start getting rid of books. Let's start with the Australian books. The Morbids is a book I haven't read. It's an Australian kind of contemporary book that I think came out in like 2020 maybe? And it features a main character who has like death anxiety and starts drinking a lot because of it. I hate that I never got to it, but I also don't see myself getting to it. So maybe this is our first book off the shelf. Maybe? I mean, it's not like they're coming straight off my bookshelf into an incinerator. They're going to sit on my desk until I get around to finding new homes for them. Like this isn't the major commitment I'm making it out to be in my head. So let's just move it from the shelf to my desk. That's all that's happening right now. That's a little easier. Okay, book number 1. There we go. Yes. Book number 2, where are you? A Lonely Girl is a Dangerous Thing. I think I bought this book sort of around the time I got the Morbids, but I did get this one from Savers. Yep, a 2020 release. This is a contemporary sad girl book. I mean, can you tell? I haven't had the greatest track record with sad girl books. And this is one of those books that's almost certainly at my library. So if I change my mind, I'll get it from the library. 2 books, yes! I think that might be all I'm willing to part with for now from my Australian fiction. Let's move on to the Australian non-fiction and see how we go there. The books here are mostly like walking books and books about Melbourne. So they're kind of like good reference books to have that I want to keep. Finding the Heart of the Nation. This is kind of like a very big, pretty book. It does have lots of information about the Uluru Statement of the Heart. I have flicked through and read like a decent amount of this, but a lot of the information I get about the Statement from the Heart and Treaty and The Voice and stuff like that are from Indigenous activists that I like to follow online, and Thomas Mayer is one of those. I feel like this would be a really cool book to put in my local like little library so that somebody else can read it, especially with the vote for The Voice coming up soon in Australia. Is that it? One book from that section. Oh, this is slow going at the beginning, isn't it? Let's now just dive into my biggest section on my shelf, and that is this shelf and this shelf, all the way across, and honestly a little bit down onto the third, which is just international fiction. Very vague. Anything that's fiction that is published not in Australia, basically. So in here we've got contemporary, we've got mystery, we've got fantasy, we've got everything. I think you get the idea. I have a lot of Margaret Atwood. Basically we've got this side stack, and then some more here. She's the author I definitely have the most of. As I've mentioned, when I was 16, I read The Handmaid's Tale for school for English Extension and loved it. It was kind of the first proper book I'd ever read. So I fell in love with Margaret Atwood. I've read a lot of her books. I haven't read all of them yet though, because I suppose in the last few years I've not fallen out of love with her. I'm just not as compelled to read her as I once was. And so I have some of like the beautiful hardback editions of books. I even found like a first edition of Oryx and Crake, which like I'm never getting rid of. But The Stone Mattress, I liked this well enough, but I didn't love it. And her short stories, aside from Moral Disorder, have never been my absolute favourite. There was one other one, Dancing Girls. I did like Dancing Girls. Do I need to keep it though? I don't think I do. I don't think I do. Also, and please don't kill me, but I'm not super into her poetry. I don't hate it. Like, I read it and I'm like, cool, I read some poetry. But I'm never like, oh my god, like I want to read more poetry now. So, is it time to get rid of this as well? I think so. I think so. I mean, I know they're only little, but like, it's progress for me, getting rid of anything Margaret Atwood. The Heart Goes Last was another one. I liked the short story it was based off on more. At least, am I making this up? I remember reading a short story that was very similar to The Heart Goes Last on like Kindle at some point. And then this book came out and it like expanded on the short story and it was interesting, but I just remember much preferring the short story. Oh, this is going to be hard with one hand. You did it. This was kind of like a speculative sci-fi-esque kind of dystopian story. Not as heavy as something like Oryx and Crake or The Handmaid's Tale, but it was like an interesting thought experiment, which I think worked better in short story form. I'm never going to reread it. And if I ever want to reread the story, it'll be the short story, not the novel. Are you telling me I'm getting rid of 4 Margaret Atwood books? Honestly, that's quite an achievement for me. So I'm going to leave the Atwood books there for now. Let's continue. I got a lovely like indie copy of Legends and Lattes, which was not my favorite book, but I love this cover and I do feel like this is the kind of book that I'd like to lend to friends. So part of me wants to get rid of it and the other part of me doesn't like wants to keep it. I'm not sure. I might put this back on the shelf, but maybe we'll come back to it. Bohemian Negligence is actually an arc and I really like the premise. Like it says on the back, if you could touch your memories, how would they feel? And there's some really cute like little illustrations in here. So I like the book itself I found very appealing, which is why I picked it up. It's a memoir by Bertie Blackman. I don't know who Bertie Blackman is. Should I know? Oh, she's Australian. So this should be up in the Australian non-fiction, not down in the international fiction. I don't know. It looks like a very cool book, but because I don't know the person, like I have no draw to read it other than the fact that that memory line sounds cool. My Sister the Serial Killer is absolutely staying, and everything Marie Brennan has ever written is absolutely staying. Now, A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I didn't like this book. I do have some more in the Wayfarer series, and I have been told by people that the first one is not as good and that I should try at least one more book. But I've also heard that they're pretty well standalones, so I don't think I need to keep this. Like, even if I end up loving some of the other books, I don't need the one that I didn't like. So I'm going to get rid of this one. But for now, the other 2 can stay, and I do need to get around to at least one of them sooner rather than later, so that way I can know if I want to continue or bother with the series at all. Here's something we can get rid of. The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels. I actually quite liked this book, but I hated the second book. I've already gotten rid of that second one, so like there's no need for me to hold on to the first. And it's not like this was like a 5-star favorite. It was like a 3.5 good time. You know, like I don't need this book. You made a fool with Death with Your Beauty. Of Death with Your Beauty. God, that title. I did really like this. There was one thing about the ending that I didn't really like. So even though I thought this was really fun and pacey and I enjoyed reading it, again, I don't think this is one I'm ever going to reread, as much as I love Akwaeke Emezi. I need room on my shelf more than I need a romance that I kind of liked last year. You know what I mean? I suppose that goes for the Thursday Murder Club as well. Like, part of me was keeping this because I thought I might reference it in videos, which I probably still will, but like I can add up a picture in the video. I don't need to have the actual book. Goodbye, Thursday Murder Club. Another book that can go is Wrong Place, Wrong Time. Again, didn't hate it, but didn't love it. Okay, for a book I haven't read, it's The Missing Person by Quay Quaddy. I got it to add to my collection of like cozy mystery, but the more I hear about this one, the more I realize that I think it's going to be more along the line of thriller. That's not what I'm looking for. I don't think I'm going to like it. So I'm going to send off this brand new lovely copy to somebody else. Speaking of books that I haven't read, it's Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You? I was so excited when they came out with different colors and one of them was yellow. Yellow is my favorite color. I was a little bit on the normal people hype train. I think I gave that like a 4-star when I read it. I liked it a lot. And I think it was just nice finding a millennial writer who is like vocally socialist. And I kind of had vague ideas that I was going to read Conversations with Friends and Beautiful World, Where Are You? And I was going to be like a Sally Rooney girly. It just never happened. Every time I see this on my shelf, I'm like, oh yeah, I have that. Why? So I think it's time to go. Oh, I feel like for how many books are in my international fiction section, I'm doing terribly. Sayaka Murata. This is gonna get me on like the hit list for like the literary translation YouTubers. I really like Convenience Store Woman, but I think I had a very different interpretation and reading of it from what it seems like most people did. I didn't find that book funny. I found it kind of really quite moving and sad in a lot of ways. Anyway, I did read Earthlings after liking Convenience Store Woman so much. This is bonkers and weird, and I didn't hate it, but it's just not my kind of bonkers and weird. And so, like, I also have her short story collection, but I don't know that I haven't never had a desire to pick it up. So I think I'm kind of done with Sayaka Murata. I will keep Convenience Store Woman because, like I said, I do really like that book for how I experienced it. But these two, I don't need them. Come on, I can do better than this. Asylum Road. This was a book I read a couple of years ago, and I really liked it. I don't remember what I gave it, maybe like 4 stars, but it was the kind of book that just stayed with me. And I still kind of think about like the atmosphere and the tension of this book. It's very much a literary story, but it's written almost as if it is a thriller. So I liked a lot about it, but like I don't want to reread it, and I don't really find myself ever talking about it. That's the thing when you have limited space. You kind of get to a point where even the books you really liked, there's not much point in actually keeping. It's a little bit sad, but it's also just how it is. I like to feel like my shelves are full of my favorite books and then a lot of opportunity for new favorites. Books I haven't yet read but I'm looking forward to. Rather than just all of the books I've ever read. Because I just don't have space for that. Okay, I'm getting a little stuck on the international fiction. Now let's move to the international non-fiction, which is all down this shelf here. There are still some here that I do want to get to in time, but there's plenty here that I've either read and I don't want to reread, or that I'm clearly not getting to. So Ruthless, let's do it. Straight away, we've got 2 books here. We've got The Existentialist Cafe by Sarah Bakewell. We read this with my Blossom Book Club and I really enjoyed it. I especially really enjoyed talking about it with Laura because she knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. But like, realistically, am I going to reread this? Probably not. It was a little bit over my head, to be honest. And I also still had the bookmark in here because I did switch to the audiobook like 20% of the way in. So, I mean, I'll just go back to the audiobook if I really do want to go back to this book. And then another book is Margaret Atwood. Oh my god, I'm getting rid of so many Margaret Atwoods. It's Margaret Atwood's In Other Words, SF and the Human Imagination. This is Margaret's account of her lifelong relationship with sci-fi. I love a lot of her fiction. Non-fiction, I could take it or leave it. And today we are leaving it. I bought this book when we found out my grandfather was dying, and I sort of had vague hopes of reading it. It's called The Aftergrief, Finding Your Way Along the Long Arc of Loss by Hope Elderman. However, I found myself gravitating towards fiction that dealt with these themes rather than non-fiction. This, not so much. I lost 3 very dear people in the space of a year, and if I didn't read it then, like, I'm probably not going to read it, you know? I said I was going to be ruthless, but that's it. That's all I've got. No, come on, I can do better than that. Okay, Standing at the Edge by Joan Halifax is another book that we read for my Blossom Book Club ages ago, actually, and I got quite a lot out of this. And I always thought I would return to it and reread it, but to be honest, I feel like I really learnt my lessons from this book, and I've continued to think about it years later. So maybe does that mean I should keep it? For example, one of the things that I underlined here, I feel it is essential not to let ourselves be trapped by the need to be perceived as a decent person per se. More often than not, we must risk rejection or worse to stay aligned with our deepest values. We don't want to be uncomfortable or make others uncomfortable. We are conflict averse, so we avoid the reality of suffering, and systems of violence grow stronger. And here she was quoting somebody else in a conversation about the difference between gift and invasion. And apparently Jamison, who I don't know their first name, said, "Imagining someone else's pain with too much surety can be as damaging as failing to imagine it." That was a really big lesson for me in particular. I'm very empathetic, but I'm not like going around being like, I'm an empath. Because I personally think it is very much a double-edged sword. Obviously, being empathetic means that I can appreciate somebody else's pain and appreciate their perspective in a way that it comes pretty easily to me most of the time, which I think is a beautiful thing. But if I allow it to, it can mean that I make situations where somebody else is struggling about me and how much I'm struggling because I feel their pain. And I think for a long time I thought that suffering alongside someone was somehow like helpful. And so this book, I think, really helped me put that in perspective. I know it all sounds quite simple and I feel like I've grown a lot since this book, but it helped me an awful lot. So part of me does want to keep it. I don't think I need to return to it because, like I said, I feel like I've learned the lessons. But like a book that changed you that much, like, is it worthy of a place on your shelf then? I don't know. I don't know that I'm ready to let it go. Okay, we've got the Dialectical Behavioural Therapy diary. I've never filled this out as a diary. Primarily, I did kind of refer to some of the notes at the beginning. DBT is amazing, but I don't feel like I need this. I haven't been utilising it to its fullest. Paganism, An Introduction to Earth-Centered Religions by Joyce M. River Higginbotham. I loved this book. I got this, I think, at the recommendation of Kara, Cute Witch 772, back in like 2013 or 2014. And it was incredible. I read it multiple times. I have so many markings in here. And for those of you who don't know, I used to have a tarot channel and we explored some like level of pagan spirituality. And while I do feel like I have carried a lot of the philosophy and ideology with me, I just don't do it in such like an intentional way as like I think a lot of people who identify as witches or pagans do. I know some people have been wondering if I've like gone like Christian or full atheist. I don't know what I am, man. And I never really did. This book though was incredible in helping me kind of like unpack some of the Christian kind of dogma I'd grown up with, even though that was pretty minor compared to a lot of people. And it also just helped me broaden my perspective on what divinity or meaning could be. Having said that, I haven't touched this book in years and I don't think I am going to return to it. But if you're ever looking for something like this, it's incredible. Highly recommend. Speaking of books I haven't touched in years, this is a big throwback. This is Witch Lilith, Feminist Writers Recreate the World's First Woman. I really loved this book. I thought it was brilliant. It was very hard to get, and I still have very fond memories of it. This is the kind of anthology that I love. There were essays, there's poetry, there were short stories, there were just kind of like thought experiments. It was great, but I don't see myself ever going back to it. I might have a flick through it and decide. Teaching a Stone to Talk by Annie Dillard. This is a book that I got through the Life's Library. I just never got around to it, and I don't really know who Annie Dillard is. Like, I don't know a lot about her. If you think that I like need to read this book or any of the books that I'm mentioning that I'm getting rid of that I haven't yet read, if you feel very strongly that I need to keep a book, I will let you, the comments, convince me of maybe one or two. So like, you need to have a really good argument as to why I personally need to read this and you think I would love it. So let me know in the comments. Fight for your book if there are any. But I think I might get rid of this one unless you convince me otherwise. Actually, this was another book that I got through the Life's Library. Without You, There Is No Us by Suki Kim. Undercover Among the Sons of North Korea's Elite. And it was Rosianna who picked this one. Again, I did have vague intentions of reading it. I've just never gotten to it. And I don't know that I'm going to. I feel like I have not done very well. But let's move down to my manga on this next shelf. I might actually need to move you down for this part. Let's go. I know the angle's a little weird, but we're working with it, okay? Okay, so manga. Last time we did this video, I said I was getting rid of these two books and I never did. We've got the first book, oh sorry, that's the back. We got the first book of Spy Family and the first book of Astra Lost in Space. I really liked both of these, but I'm not continuing with the series. So like, why do I have the first book still? I don't know. All of my Natsume is getting a bit messy. Back when I originally thought I was going to try and turn my tarot channel into a booktube channel and like, you know, what do you call it? Transition, that's it. Transition my content from tarot content to book content. Back when I thought I was gonna try and do that on my main channel, I found this weird and wacky out of print manga series on Gumtree, I think. It's called The Tarot Cafe. There are 7 volumes. I have the complete set. And I just thought that like something like this would be a good way of kind of like helping that transition along, where I'm actively doing like a reading vlog, but what I'm reading is about tarot. Clearly I decided to just make a whole new channel and we can have another talk about whether that was a good idea another day. I don't know that like Tarot Reader reads The Tarot Cafe. Like, this is an out of print manga series that I don't think anybody knows about or cares about. And to be perfectly honest, like, I don't really even care about it. I just thought it would make a fun video. And I'm here like 2 years later and I still haven't made that video. So like, Do I need to keep? Do I need to keep 7 volumes? Probably not. I've got quite a lot of Inio Asano's works. Downfall was one of the first I'd read when I first started trying to read manga, and I was blown away by the artwork. And I think I also really appreciated how like adult his works were. And as much as I love Goodnight Ponpon, there are themes in his work that just feel really quite sexist. Examples like this book, they also feel very like self-deprecating and self-flagellating, I would say. And so part of me wasn't sure if like the sexism itself was like self-aware. You know, like there's one scene in particular in this book where what seems to be a pretty clear self-insert attempts to rape somebody. I just was never quite exactly sure where the author was coming down on that scene. Whether he was telling it to show what a horrible human being he is, or whether he was telling it as like some like kind of edgy thing. I could never tell, and that really, really bothered me. Like I said, there was other elements of the storytelling and the artwork that I loved so much, which is why I kind of pushed through. But yeah, like I don't need to keep this on my shelf anymore. Like with that horrible scene. I just don't. Like, why do I even have this still? Blue Flag was a first volume that I really quite enjoyed, and I've heard really good things about the series, but I just don't see myself purchasing the rest of the series to finish it. I liked it, and I'm glad I read it so that I can hand sell the first volume. Reading the first in any series is kind of like the most important as a bookseller. So I've done that. I liked it a lot. Lovely, but I don't need to continue. Okay, we've gone through all my sections now. Like, I mean, I do have some tarot decks and stuff down there. But those are all the books that I've been through. And I do not feel like I've done a very good job. So let me lift you up. And I think we need to go back for round 2. Okay, we've got a second angle and we're going to go through the shelves a second time. Let me count how many books I've actually pulled off the shelf so far first. 37. I think I already have about that many that I need to fit on the shelf. So like I need to do better than that. This shelf is always the hardest. Okay, all right. Ruth Ozeki's Tale for the Time Being. I read this in a Wild Book Box reading vlog. It was honestly a hugely unique story, unlike anything I've ever read before. It broke me though. If you'd like to hear more of my thoughts, I'll leave a link to the reading vlog above for you. Am I ever going to reread this? Absolutely not. Like, no way will I ever put myself through this again. And to be perfectly honest, it's also a book that I don't want to recommend because of like the themes and the way that it explores those themes. Like I wouldn't feel safe giving this as a pretty general recommendation because it's fucked up. It's absolutely fucked up. I went on a journey with that book, which is why I've been keeping it. But like, I don't think that was necessarily a good journey. You know what I mean? Hey honey, come here. You want to cuddle? Do you want to say hi to everybody? Yeah, you've been helping me, huh? Yeah, keeping me company. You're a very good girl. Okay, enough procrastinating. More books. Daughter of a Moon Goddess. I loved this book, but I hated the second book. I've already gotten rid of the second book. I don't think it ever actually made its way onto my shelf. So like it has completely tainted my experience of this first book, even though I adored it. Am I ever going to reread it knowing that I hate the second one? Probably not. Let's be real. But yeah, I don't think I need to hold on to this, even though it was one of my favorite books of last year. Is that normal to do? We're doing it. It's happening. Can I say something controversial? I don't know that I want to read Circe. I liked The Song of Achilles well enough, but like I didn't adore it like everybody else adores it. And so even though I've kind of vaguely wanted to read Circe, and I think I got this in a Wild Book Box, or maybe I got it secondhand, it's not new. I just don't know that like myth retellings are really my thing. I've had this on my shelf for ages and just like never been like, oh yes, today's the day. I can't wait to read Circe. I'm always like, oh yeah, I should probably read Circe sometime, shouldn't I? You know what? I am the master of my own destiny. I don't have to read Circe if I don't want to. And you know what? We're going to go back to Legends and Lattes. I didn't like this, so why would I keep it? Back up to Australian non-fiction. We've got 2 very lovely hardback books here. We got My Friend Fox and Old Seems to Be Other People. These both are memoirs. Both of them I really liked. This one is about somebody experiencing schizophrenia. And this one is about what it means to age. And honestly, I feel like in a lot of ways this one hit me more. I feel like we don't read enough, young people at least. Can I still call myself young? I'm 32. We don't engage with the concept of aging enough, and I think a lot of us don't even really like relate to people who are older than us outside of our family. I've mentioned before that like a lot of my best friends are like Gen X or boomers. So I very much appreciate the wisdom and power of intergenerational friendships and the perspective that they offer. And I found this really, really powerful in a similar way of kind of like humanizing older people. I know that sounds ridiculous, and I know there are plenty of you who are older than me who watch my channel, so I hope you know what I'm saying. As for My Friend Fox, I loved reading it. I'm really glad that this has been published in Australia. I'm glad people are reading it. I think it's important and powerful, but like, I've read it and I'm not going to reread it. So maybe we can get rid of them. Actually, I'm already having second thoughts on those two. Because I know that at some point I would like to do an Australian non-fiction book recommendations, and I feel like both or either of these could make that list. And if they're not on my shelf, it will be too easy to forget them. I'm retracting that statement. I'm keeping them both. Okay, a book I have not yet read, and honestly it's so short I probably just should, but that's what I've been telling myself for the last year or two. It's The Woman in the Purple Skirt by Natsuko Imamura. This is such a beautiful cover. I love it. But I have heard nothing but bad things about this book since it came out. And I know you shouldn't just listen to people online and reviews, but like, it did take the steam out of my interest for this book, I can't lie. Now, to be fair, a lot of the Japanese translated works that are some of my favorite, like There's No Such Thing as an Easy Job, one of my favorite books of all time, that has a pretty low rating on Goodreads, and I've heard mostly negative things about that one too. Is that rational? Probably not. Am I going to read this? Probably not. Another book I haven't read yet, it's A Lady's Guide to Etiquette and Murder by Diane Freeman. This honestly just gives me the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrel vibes. Ever since I hated that series as much as I did, I've been put off by association to this book. Does that make any sense? And yeah, I'm just completely put off now. Like, I'm sorry to this author. I know you did nothing wrong. But yeah, I just, like, I don't want to read this anymore. She I Dare Not Name by Donna Ward, A Spinster's Meditations on Life. This is a book that I actually bought my mum a while ago, and she loved it and she wanted me to read it. But I did start reading this, and there was something about the tone and the voice that I just wasn't really into, and I've just found it hard to ever push myself to return to. So I think this is one that I just need to give up on. I'm really glad other people have loved it. I don't think it's for me though. Okay, I have made an effort so far to tell you about every book that I'm pulling off the shelf, because last time I didn't do that and then everybody was upset with me in the comments, so I had to do a second video going through all of the books that I unhauled. In this video I've been doing my best to tell you about all of the books I'm getting rid of and why. But now I just want to we're just going to have some music, and I'm going to look through my shelves and see if I can pull off anything that I just kind of just don't want based on vibes alone. Vibes and feelings, and I have no justification for it. That just might take the pressure down a notch to get me to get some of these books off my shelf. Basically, we are now entering the judgment-free zone. So that's what we're going to do, and see how that works for us, because we need to do a little bit better. This whole no judgment thing's really working out for me. I'll hold them up and you can see them, but do your best to be nice. And if you can't be nice, don't leave a comment, okay? I've got a few more. These I can actually tell you about. I Had That Same Dream Again. This is a really sweet book. I liked it a lot. I read it years ago. I don't really think about the book anymore. The Hookah Girl and Other Stories is a little graphic novel. It's really good. I liked it a lot, but I don't think it's likely I'm going to reread it. And I don't know, I feel like this is one that I just never see around in Australia. So I kind of like the idea of it finding a new audience rather than just sitting on my shelf. And then The Wisdom of Florence Scovel Shinn. My parents, in particular, my father is obsessed with Florence Scovel Shinn. And I don't really know why I have this. I already have another this cute little book that my mum gave me as like a present, which I will keep. I don't need to keep her whole book though. I mean, maybe I'll ask my dad if he wants this. So you know how I wax lyrical about how good Blue Flag is, but I don't see myself investing in any more volumes? I already have volumes 2, 3, and 4. Like, what is wrong with me? But now that I've mentally checked out of this series, I don't really want to continue, and I don't want to keep buying more. So I think I'm gonna try and sell these on Gumtree or something. I mean, I guess that does mean that I'm getting rid of 4 books instead of just 1. This is a poetry collection that I got in the Life's Library that I did really like. It's called Space Struck, but I didn't love it enough to ever reread it, so this one can go. I think that might be as well as I'm going to do on these shelves. So let me count and see how many books we've gotten rid of. The stacks are getting pretty hefty. We have 59 books. 59 books. Part of me really wants to make it 60. Come on, one more book. One more book. Here we go. Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, and it's all small stuff. This book I got because I was originally going to do a video reading books that my mum has like loved over her lifetime, and this was one of them. I remember her blaring this, you know, on the tape in the car on the way to school every morning, and just trying to drown out me and John fighting. So sorry, Mum. And I found this at Savers a little while after I decided to do that video, but we're talking like 2 or 3 years ago I had this concept. And part of me still wants to do that, but I also know myself and that I don't think this is going to be something I would love, partly just because it's super dated, you know, and I wouldn't want to like tear to shreds my mum's favorite books, because like I totally understand that in the 90s, she needed this shit. You know what I mean? Like, we were going through a lot with my dad's broken neck and me and John being little shits. So I don't know. I just wouldn't want to make a video about like shitting on the books that like helped my mum get through a really hard time. And I'm not saying that this is a bad book. I just feel like it's not necessarily a book for me. Do you know what I mean? I hope you know what I mean, Mum. I love you. You know what? I think that might be as good as I'm going to do. 60 books off this shelf, I think is a fair effort. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to put the books that I have out here on my reading chair onto the shelves, just to get an idea of how much space we actually have. I don't think I have 60 books to put on there, so I think we have achieved like a net increase of space. So let me do that. These are just all the books that I showed you in a haul recently, so you already know what these are. I'm just putting them on the shelves. Okay. I think that's everything. I think everything is on the shelves now, and there is quite a lot more space, which is good. I definitely want to go through and organize my shelves, and I'm not exactly sure what the plan is. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep them in this like Australian and international sort of sections, or now that I'm reading more genre fiction, if I should start organizing by genre as well, because it has always felt a little bit weird for me having Freya Marsk's books up in the Australian, just because it doesn't feel very Australiana. Do you know what I mean? I think they're set in England. Anyway, that's something for me to think about, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think I should organize my shelves? Okay, I think we're done now. Thanks so much for hanging out with me and helping me out. 60 books off my shelf. That's a pretty good effort, especially one-handed. I think we did well. If there is a book that I've gotten rid of that you want to defend in the comments, especially if it's one I haven't read yet and you think that I should, and I'm open to it. Now I got to figure out what to do with all these books. Most of these will go to friends. Obviously, as a bookseller, I have a lot more access to books than a lot of people. So I do have some friends who don't have as much access to books as they would like. So my first port of call when I do these is always to take a photo of all of the spines and send it to some friends and see if they want any of the books. And usually they want most of them. There are a few that I want to put in our Life's Library, especially some of the kids' books. And then there are a couple that I might try and sell, especially if they're sets. And if there's any left over, they'll be going to Savers. So even though we did achieve quite a lot today, there's still plenty of work ahead for me for moving these on and finding new homes. But thank you for helping me with the first step, because that is emotionally the hardest one. But anyway, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. A big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon, and especially a big thank you goes to Olivia, Lynette Brown and Marie. I will talk to you all in the comments and in the next video. Until then, so much love. Bye!